What's the strangest thing you've caught someone doing in the workplace? I once saw an old bloke slowly walk near a tree, have his hat pushed off by one of the low-hanging branches, then proceed to, slowly, pick up the hat, declare I avenge myself in a neutral tone, and then break a twig off the tree before slowly walking off. At my old job, I once walked in on my manager thoroughly engrossed in making a herd of balloon animals while drinking a beer at 10 AM. I work in pharmaceutical marketing. Some of the balloon animals were pretty cool. He gave me a Dachshund-shaped one. Dachshund. In my old office, the windows along one side of the building overlooked a block of apartments. We often saw people hanging out on their balconies, drinking coffee or putting their laundry out or whatever. Then there was the fateful day we all downed tools and went to stand at the window en masse, staring open-mouthed like the stark bollock naked couple having lengthy and vigorous frick session, in a variety of positions, right on the balcony opposite. Even our boss was only making the most half-hearted of motions to get us to go and get back to work. That was an interesting day. I used to work in retail and I did a rotational evening shift with this weird dude. He was about 50ish, fairly mild-mannered, didn't make too much fuss, friendly etc. One day I didn't clock in until 20 minutes after I was supposed to start due to a car accident blocking my route to work. Normally I greet him at the warehouse door as he has to let me in, but he must have assumed I wasn't coming, because I spotted him in the dark corner by the generator, with a small spotlight on the shelf behind him. He had a pile of broken stuff returned by customers and was looking over it. I pressed the doorbell and he hurriedly put it all away and came jogging over. I asked him about it and he denied it at first, but I said I saw it and he relented. He liked to fix things and take them home. Some he gave to charity, some he gave to his grandkids, some he gave to his wife. The dude was prolific. He had hidden a compartment in a shelf and padlocked it. It was behind panel in the internal wall behind the generator. For about an hour I watched him take apart an electronic 9-volt drill, find the fault and put it all back together again. From that moment on, neither of us did much work in the warehouse. To be fair, he confessed that he enjoyed the night shifts because all the day shift had done most of the work. He would spend the first hour or so tidying up and finishing off the day shift's job and then he would go out of sight of the CCTV cameras and just fix things, because he loved doing it. Occasionally one of us would do a lap to show the cameras we were working. Our job was to cross-check and catalog what the day shift had moved out of the warehouse against what was sold, so they could always maximize warehouse space. It was dull, boring but easy work. I hope that dude is okay and I do think about him from time to time. That guy sounds pretty awesome even if he was a bit strange. Seems like he really enjoyed fixing things and that was the perfect job for him to engage in his passion. Jacking off to an old school workout video at 11 AM. I work in a hospital. This didn't happen to me but my colleague. So the bathroom of our workplace was structured like an actual home bathroom. It had a bowl, along with a sink with a mirror over it, and dividing the room was the curtain which contained the shower area, but was simply used as a storage area for cleaning supplies. Usually the curtain was pulled all the way to the end so all the cleaning materials wouldn't be in clear view when you enter it. So one time my colleague did her deed when she was done, flushed the toilet, and proceeded to the sink to wash her hands. But when she looked in the mirror, she was horrified when she saw someone else's reflection from behind the curtain. It was our workplace's new cleaning lady. It turns out, cleaning lady was hiding behind the curtains and she was texting Because of this I made it a habit to check if there's someone hiding behind the curtains before I use the bathroom. Worked at a gross butt pizza shop in a college town that was open until 3 AM to get all the drunks. One night after a particularly heinous group of kids came in we closed shop and cleaned up. I was checking the bathroom and realized it was locked from the inside so I knock like crazy but no one answers. I pop the lock with my pocket knife and come in to find two drunken male students passed out mid-romantic tryst. One guy is passed out cold on the crapper, with another guy's face in his naked lap. Wake them up and send them away. Someone was getting a blumpkin. When I was 15 my mom worked for a nursing home and they implemented a new program to print out menus. My mom sucks at computers so one day she decides I can work there under the table and help with the system. The place used to be a hospital, but when it became a nursing home the wards were shut down. The closed wards weren't locked very well, so a lot of homeless people would sneak into the closed wards to sleep. When I was working for my mom I accidentally went into the wrong door and it was a closed ward. It looked like a scene from 28 Days Later. Someone literally just closed the ward and left the equipment, the beds, even some medical files from the 80s. What was even creepier is there were clothing in the hallway. Someone was clearly there recently. I noped the frick out and went to go find my mom. That's so awesome. I am fascinated by abandoned hospitals. Was working at a wedding reception and was replacing the soap in the women's toilets and walked in on the groom fricking the maid of honor. Someone caught me. I was walking to my car for lunch. I was gonna have hot dogs, so I was singing the theme to Cat Dog, an old Nickelodeon cartoon, but with the word hot dogs instead of cat dog, and kind of in the style of a smarmy lounge singer. An older lady I work with got out of her car right as I was passing and asked, "What are you singing?" My mind went blank. I honestly couldn't think of any way to explain it to her. It's not like she would have watched Cat Dog. I just said I don't know, got in my car and left. Cat Dog, an old Nickelodeon cartoon. Get off my lawn. When I was working in a butchery I was cleaning the food display, like the food displays you see in a supermarket. No glass in front of the display, so it took me roughly 2-3 hours to clean that son of a bee. When I was finally done and ready to go home, a drunk homeless guy waddles inside the store. I think nothing of it and go to the back of the store, because unfortunately it wasn't the first time and my supervisor always takes care of the problem, but not this time. This guy bends over to look at some of the meat and just falls over into the food display, face first. But instead of climbing out of the food display he decides to lay down and just chill. Imagine my surprise when I walked back to the food display to close everything and I see a homeless guy just chilling inside the food display. Had to throw away all the meat and had to clean the whole food display again. FML. TLDR. Cleaned the food display. Drunk homeless guy comes in and decides to chill inside the food display. Had to clean the whole dang thing again. Jacking off to surf videos in a booth after hours at a pizza place. The worst part was that it was reported by someone walking by who saw it in the window and then we had to watch it on the security tapes to confirm. Oh, the puns we wanted to make while confronting him. Hand over fist, jerking off at work, etc. Also, it set precedent for a rule we never thought we'd have to actually state during orientation. Surf's up. At a previous job, we had to let a guy go that just wasn't really capable of keeping up with the workload. He was let go, and one day one of us went into his desk drawers to find something. We discovered a collection of post-it notes, where he had drawn, or I should say attempted to draw, little portraits of almost everyone in the office. He wasn't a very good artist, and we all got a good chuckle, because it was impossible to tell who almost anyone was without the names he had written at the top of each one. He hadn't done them to be mean. We surmised that he likely just spent a lot of his time he was supposed to be working, drawing instead but looking like he was working. We are talking there was like 50-60 post-it note portraits. Most people kept theirs for a while afterward. It was funny. That's so cute. Did security at Cancer Research Center. This meant about once a week we would have an older white man in a baseball camp come in and try to demand some lab space and funding because he had discovered the cure for cancer, stevia AMD water. When security showed up he'd snap from yelling to being chill and polite. As far as employees go, I was working the grave shift. Around 4 AM I heard weird sounds coming from a lab. Assuming a machine was malfunctioning or maybe even a homeless man had snuck in, I approached. It was just a middle-aged scientist practice deep-throating a test tube. She did it a few times before realizing I was in the room. We made eye contact, tube still in her mouth, and I just hoped out. Should have asked if she wanted some real-life practice. I worked at Domino's and saw two guys walk out of the bathroom together. There's only one toilet, so they had what I like to call a number 4. I did some work experience at a music shop a few years back, and once this woman came in to talk to the owner, it looked like she had just been out of hospital, still with her little band on her wrist. She started spouting off a lot of stuff but killing herself. How she'll be dead anyway in a few months. I'm guessing she had cancer. It was strange thing to see when you're 16. Just as she is about to leave, the owner and his friend walked up to her, put their hands on her head, and started praying in tongues. I just stared in bewilderment. I didn't even know that was still a thing. An older homeless man would hide in the church, under one of the 1,300 pews, just before closing time and spend the night there. He'd get into the communion wine and sleep on a pew cushion, even in the midst of my practicing the organ at night. If the caretaker came by and tried to rouse him, the guy would yell a resounding "Hail Mary" and go soundly back to sleep. I just let him be. A warm place to sleep on cold winter nights, with a men's room near the front door. He did no harm. Except drink the wine. When I worked at a big supermarket, a man in his 50s pulled down his pants and started pooping in a bookshelf of children's books. That was strange. Lem tell you all about the men's room at the office I work at. I have seen the strangest things in there and continue to see new and stranger things every week. I don't have much time before I need to leave for work actually, so I'll just share one of them for now. This was the first weird thing I saw in the men's room. I come out of the stall and head over to the long row of sinks to wash my hands. Standing at one of the sinks is a mid-20s, light-skinned Latino man in a nice suit. Beside him is a hefty bag full of ice cubes. The small kind, like you'd get from an automatic ice vending thinge. And what he's doing is reaching both hands into the bag, coming up with handfuls of ice, and holding them under the automatic sensor that turns the sink on. He stands there like this for about 10 seconds while it melts the ice, then repeats the process. He sees me see him doing this, looks over at me, and does that work, right where Ganado kinda shrug and continues on with his appointed work. If I can find this post when I get back from work, I'll write out some more. There's tons. A couple weeks ago, I'm washing my hands at the sink and a man comes out of the stall behind me with his pants and underwear at his ankles. This grown man proceeds to do the little kid shuffle all the way across the room to the sink, where he washes his hands, then pulls his pants up, butt all hanging out and whatnot. Ugh, more to come. Just the other day, I was again washing my hands when an older gentleman enters the bathroom. He's dressed like me, not like the cleaning crew. He opens each stall, looks in, and after looking at all of them, he sighs dejectedly, washes his hands and leaves. This intern who used to sit near me would eat yogurt every morning and he would moan while eating. WTF. Dude, steamy yogurt. You're obviously missing out. Worked at Burger King in high school. I was told by a manager to go grab something out of the walk-in cooler. When I walked in, the larger guy I worked with was in the middle of eating the small pre-packaged pies we sold at the time. There was cream on his face and a few empty boxes near him. All he said was, "Please don't tell." Was hard to look him in the eye after that. This sounds like something Kevin say to Oscar. Someone sawing a plank of wood in half whilst sat on it. A customer couldn't wait for 2 minutes for me to come and saw a plank down for him, so he put it on 2 trolleys, put a knee on it and started sawing. Just as I arrived in the aisle, I saw him look up at me in panic as he realized he'd been caught in the act and had seen that he was about to face plant the floor as the saw broke through. Managed to grab a copy from the CCTV, though I never had the balls to put it on YouTube. The customer was the usual bigot that knew better than these hardware shop assistants, so he ate humble pie for a long time. Put it on YouTube. I was sitting next to this guy in an office meeting. He seemed to be taking lots of notes, so I looked to see what he was writing. He was drawing on the conference room table, like writing his nickname in a sort of bad graffiti style. He'd also drawn something that looked like a mushroom cloud explosion. I nudged him and mouthed what the frick. He looked at me like what, then looked around the room and his face went white. He'd forgotten where he was and his mind, out of boredom I guess, went back to school mode. He was about 20 or something and this was his first office job. He hid the doodle and we volunteered to tidy up the room after the meeting. We used alcohol hand gel to lift the ink but couldn't do anything about the carving effect his penmanship had made. Luckily no one ever mentioned it, but at another meeting I saw him draw Jack Skellington on his arm. My boss was an odd person. He also drank a lot. He would often bring a can of beer into work and pour it into a coffee mug in the morning so he could drink it inconspicuously. One day, he ran out of clean mugs, so he got a large bowl, filled it with beer, and drank directly from the bowl. At this point everyone had long since caught on to his antics, and requested he just drink out of the can like a regular human being. Not strangest thing so much as strangest person. He's like Dwight Schrute. Let's call him Mark. Mark wears shorts to work with sandals and socks every day. They are always the same. He also wears the same raggedy hole-filled t-shirt. Mark has a file on everyone he works with. This is a well-known fact and he will openly admit he has files on everyone. Mark regularly brings drinks in that look like alcohol. They aren't alcohol, he is just waiting for someone unsuspecting to accuse him of bringing in alcohol so he can report them for bullying. Mark has reported 10 people I know of for bullying. No action has been taken against any of them. Mark uses the printer almost constantly. I have no idea what he prints, but he prints easily over 100 pages a day and spends his breaks with these sheets and a highlighter. His job gives him very little cause to legitimately use a printer. Mark spends a lot of time in the canteen. If you go in while he is there, you will most likely be cornered and get a lecture about whatever is grinding his gears at that current moment. Mark has an issue with every single initiative the department tries to implement. Mark has the loudest, most obnoxious ringtone I've ever heard. His phone rings about 10 times a day and he takes an exceptionally long time to answer it. Mark's desk is a catastrophe. It honestly looks like a hoarder's house. I have no idea how no one has complained. We work for the government. Mark is essentially immune to being fired. Also, in an old job, one of the bosses was caught giving it to a cashier in a tiny room upstairs. No negative consequences somehow. Mark uses the printer almost constantly. I have no idea what he prints, but he prints easily over 100 pages a day and spends his breaks with these sheets and a highlighter. His job gives him very little cause to legitimately use a printer. Mark has files on everyone. Go to print off hard copies at some point. I had a coworker who was a really lovely guy. We all worked a cubicle desk job and he was very helpful and unassuming. But for some reason, he would bring a whole bunch of homemade sandwiches, standard white bread with deli meat and cheese, from home and try to peddle them off to the rest of us during lunch. I think this happened for a week before HR talked to him and told him to cut that crap out. Well, this was after the fact. Hired a guy for night janitor work and I came in one morning and found him with a rope around his neck and his pants around ankles. Police ruled it accidental death by autoerotic asphyxiation. Check kiting. So, yeah, kinda boring. But it was the strangest. It was at a small credit union back before electronic clearing of checks was possible. One of the employees frequently made cash deposits and had corresponding check withdrawals coming out of her account. I totaled all her cash deposits for the year so far. I think it was February, and showed her that she'd deposited more than she and her husband earned in an entire year in just 2 months. I didn't have authority to fire her, so I reported it up to the CEO, who warned her. She ended up getting fired a couple years later when a surprise cash count revealed that she'd been borrowing from her cash drawer. There was a post somewhere on Reddit about a guy who used an open ceiling space above an unused conference hall at his workplace to jack off and drink vodka. One day they had a meeting there and he fell down on the table, pants around his ankles with all the debris, bottles and pee mags, because he weakened the structure with his weight or something. I've a bridge to sell if you believe that. Cute, shy and innocent emo receptionist goes shopping on her lunch break and buys knee-high leather boots. Comes back, shows them to colleague. Creepy old guy who would have been diagnosed as autistic if he was born in the last 25 years see the boots, grabs them and deeply sniffs them from top to toe. Probably checking to see if it was real leather. He was just looking out for her. So I wasn't the one to catch this guy, but funny story. My coworker buddy walked into one of the least used bathrooms. It's usually reserved for clients, and found a guy using a corn cob that was stuck to the wall. Oddly, the guy was so engrossed in it he didn't even notice my buddy walk in. The guy in question was someone attending a week-long training session, so luckily he was out of the office in just a few days. Also, the office was out of him. My buddy stores a toothbrush and an extra pair of socks in the couch in our private dining room. I've caught him brushing his teeth on several occasions. We must all aspire to be like this man. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.